So we have looked quite a lot at how to play Blood Bowl in terms of interpreting the rules, but in this final part, we're going to look at a few simple things that can help you play the game a bit better. So we're going to look at the sort of fundamental things you need to make sure you understand, the order that you take actions in, protecting the ball carrier, working with numbers and probability, and some places to look for further improvement. The key foundational thing you need to understand is the tackle zone. So it's the one game mechanic, sort of, if any, that sort of it like holds up the rest of the system. Tackle zones impact absolutely everything in the game. So if you've not got the hang of them yet, don't go any further until you have. So we talked about them at the end of part one, and then mentioned them in pretty much every other part of the series. They're really like that foundational. Building on that, and I stress this quite a lot of the time, but make sure you understand assisting blocks. You really want to be making blocks of at least 2 dice in your favour pretty much all of the time. Any blocks on 1 dice are already pretty desperate actions, especially if your player doesn't have block or wrestle. If you have the choice of making it 2 dice, make it 2 dice. And similarly, a strength 5 big guy only needs 2 assists to block a strength 3 player on 3 dice. If you have the opportunity to make it 3 dice, make it 3 dice. While we're on blocking, do your best to limit how many blocks your opponent is going to be able to make in their turn. So if you have to leave players marked, try to protect them by denying assists on their blocks. If you give up loads of 2 or 3 dice blocks every turn, you're going to find yourself down players. Take this into consideration when you're making decisions about following up blocks, standing players up, or just moving players to mark them. So are you giving your opponent an easy option to fight their way out that's going to risk your players? Next up, so roll as few d6s as possible. Every time you make a d6 roll, you risk a turnover. Obviously, you need to take those risks at some point to sort of get anywhere, but don't roll them just when you need to. If you're advancing your ball carrier, like for example, but the players that are protecting them are slower, you could be forcing some extra 2+ rolls for those players, for them to just keep up with the guy who's got the ball. Try advancing the ball a bit slower, save making those rush rolls. You should be looking to limit your rolls while making your opponent roll as many dice as you can. Overall strategy, so coaches, they're often in a hurry to score touchdowns. And there are times when this is exactly the right thing to do, but when you're the attacking team, you have the initiative. You take the first blocks in the drive, and if that went well, you could be up players or controlling the middle of the pitch, or maybe both of those things. And you might be not allowing your opponent that many easy blocks or giving them much that they can do. But when you score, that all ends. The opponent gets to take that position. And crucially, they get the ball back as well. The ideal time to score a touchdown really is right at the end of the half, so turn 8, turn 16. If you score then, the opponent gets the ball and the initiative for 1 turn, and it's difficult to make a meaningful difference to the result of the game in 1 turn. Last of these quick foundational things, so setting up. When you're kicking and on defence, you're about to give up the first turn, and it's unavoidable that you're going to give up some blocks. So general wisdom is to make sure you're minimising those blocks to the 3 that you have to put in harm's way, plus the single blitz that the opponent gets. That's a maximum of 4 players getting knocked over, and there's really no reason to make that number any higher. There are situations where it might be beneficial to sort of just pack the line of scrimmage. So some teams, obvious ones are sort of Lizardmen, Black Orcs and Khemri, they're going to have a heavy strength advantage in most games that they play. And if they pack their line, you're just not going to be able to hit their players because it's tough to get the assists in that you need to take on those higher strength players. But generally, if strength's more or less even, or if you're playing a lower strength team, just don't allow them those extra blocks. So something you need to be aware of when you set up on defence is Frenzy. The Frenzy skill poses a bigger threat of serfs, so players who are within 2 squares of the sidelines are going to be in trouble from that. If you want to put players there to protect the whole width of the pitch, you need to make sure they can't be blitzed. Just sticking them back 1 square like that to get that sort of staggered line means that they can't be blitzed off the pitch very easily. The squares that they can be blitzed off the pitch from are basically these ones. So you've got to protect against that a bit better. It's something to be aware of when your opponent has frenzy players. When you're setting up to attack, think about your first turn. So what 2 dice blocks do you have available? Where do people need to stand to make those happen? Can you make any of them 3 dice blocks? Who's going to go and secure the ball? Where's your blitz going to be? These are all things, the questions that you need to answer with your setup. So as you're setting your players up, you need to answer all of those. Think ahead about what's going to happen with those. You could just end up wasting actions if you don't. A key thing when setting up an offence is, can someone be set up to do the job that you want them to do, or are they going to need to move to where you want to go? So you might need this skeleton here to provide an assist in that first turn. Maybe if this sits over here so that the white can come and blitz here with 2 dice, the skeleton is obviously going to need to move to do that. So you know what that skeleton's first action is going to be. But let's say, for example, we'll set up like this. Maybe this zombie isn't here. Maybe the undead are down to 10 players. If you want the skeleton to come and assist over here, there's no point in starting it here. You're just going to waste its action moving 2 squares sideways, and that's its whole turn. If you start the skeleton there instead, once the white's dealt with that lineman, the skeleton can then move over here, put that second assist in as well, so you'll still get that blitz. Because once that skeleton's free to move, you still get its action, and that way you can get 2 assists out of the skeleton instead. There's an old saying in Blood Bowl that you always take the safe moves first, and to an extent that kind of holds up. By taking all of your actions that need no dice rolls, you can make those actions without risking a turnover, so you make sure you get them all. That could be a good way to start playing the game, but if you stick rigidly to that, you're going to miss out on some opportunities. What you need to do instead is think about a couple of things. So what is the most important thing I need to do in this turn? And what risk can I take to give me more less risky actions or more higher impact actions? Like, what can you open up by taking some actions? The first thing of these is going to fit into your objective overall for the drive. So if you're defending, this is probably going to be either to stop the opponent from scoring or take the ball off of the opposition and score yourself. But it might also be to make sure the opponent scores as quickly as possible, so you get the ball back that way. Second one could be something like making a 2 dice block with a block player, or 1 in 36 failure rate, to open up a path to the ball carrier for another player to go for a sack. So if you were sticking rigidly to safe moves first, this blitzer would have made a move action somewhere first and would not have been available to go for that goal. I mean, that's a bit of an extreme and maybe silly example, but hopefully you sort of see what I mean. What risk can you take to give you a chance at a big reward? And that big reward is probably going to be linked to your main objective for the turn or even for the drive. Now, I once had some coaching with a fellow who goes by the name Andy Davo. So he streams a lot of Blood Bowl 2 and he plays to a high standard, like on tabletop as well as online. And this on here is a game that I'd played previously, and we looked at this game as part of that session. But before we looked at this game, we talked quite a bit about like priorities of the turn, and the overall goal for your drive, and that's those sort of things are parts of what he does in those private coaching sessions. But he's also spoken about it quite a bit publicly when he streams and creates content and stuff. And I've linked one of his games below where he talks about some of this stuff. It's like a much shorter version of what you get in the coaching. But it's basically like sort of 4 questions to ask yourself every turn, except he explains it all while he's playing 2-minute turns in Cabal Championship Ladder and does it in about 40 seconds. Like, watch it, it's like timestamped below just before the beginning of one of his turns, and it's just one turn of the game, and it demonstrates this whole concept really well. But I'm going to go through some of it a bit slower here though. So the first thing to clear that off. First thing to think about is your overall goal for the drive. So I'm defending here. I'm playing the undead, who are all highlighted in white because it's the beginning of my turn, playing against Khemri. And I'm defending, so I want to stop them scoring, or if I can, if I get the chance, take the ball off of them and score. So the turn before this, I was holding the ball. So this ghoul over here, who's prone, they had a bad turnover in turn 1, and it left me the opportunity to get through and grab the ball. They hadn't made the ball entirely safe before they started rolling some risky blocks. But then in their turn 2, they used their blitz to knock this ghoul over again, put the ball on the floor over here. So in this turn, I do have the chance to pick the ball up again. So that's my priority for this turn. The second question, this is more for offence than defence in many ways, but is the ball safe? So I'm defending and the ball isn't safe, and I want to pick it up with one of my ghouls. So the ball's not safe when you're defending. That's what it's about. And the third one, where is the blitz? So this throw row has a tackle zone on the ball, so the blitz is going to be there on this throw row. The final one, so it's what points of contact do you have to get a decent block in? And we can identify, so this mummy over here is marked by a skeleton and just has a 2 dice block against it because it's stronger. We've also got this wrestle zombie here, who is in some tackle zones, and this ghoul who's marked by 2 players as well. So they're the points where we could potentially have a block. So what can we do to make those good blocks? But the key thing about all those other considerations should be serving that first question. So what am I trying to achieve in this drive? And specifically, what do I need to do in this turn to feed into that? So then sort of order the operations. I do need to think about the safe moves first mantra and see if there's anything I can do with that. So any safe moves I've got, well, I'm not going to need to do anything with those players later on. I should do those first. So I've got some players who can move freely, including some where I need to think about standing up. So this zombie, when it stands up, this one here, is going to be marked by a Tomb Guardian with Mighty Blow. It's strength 5, so that's just going to be a 2 dice block. And I'm not going to want to give up that block normally, but there's this other zombie here anyway. So whether this zombie stands up or not, this Tomb Guardian is going to block a zombie on 2 dice. So I might as well stand it up to put his tackle zone on the pitch. So that's probably going to be one of my first moves. This zombie with a fence go over here is also prone. When they stand up, they're going to have 1 square of movement available to them. So they're movement 4, and it costs 3 movement to stand up. And I can combine that with thinking about one of my contact points. So this wrestle zombie on the skeleton here, I can move this 1 square into there to be an assist and make that a 2 dice block. Providing I can do something about this tackle zone. So maybe that's not going to be much of a case anyway. But even if I don't take that block, I'm going to prevent them just having 2 dice here, because this one will no longer be able to assist. The mummy on the right over here is free to move and is near the ball, so I can think about putting that mummy's tackle zone on the ball, while also using it to put an assist down over here. So just stepping that mummy into that square there is probably going to be a pretty solid move. Because then even if when I start rolling dice, everything goes wrong, I've at least got a mummy standing guard on the ball, which is going to make it harder for the opponents to pick it up. The white back here with tackle is also free, and I can give, I can sort of move it in here to give this ghoul a 2 dice block on here, because once the mummy's in there and the white's in one of these squares, that's kind of overpowers the assist here, because this skeleton's assisting 2. So this Blitzroar is strength 4. I need to make this ghoul strength 5 with 2 assists to make sure I get 2 dice there. And yeah, once that blitz rolls out of the way, I can then stand up this ghoul, who's prone at the moment, and that can be an assist for this white to come and blitz the throw getting that tackle zone off of the ball, which is what I really want to do. Let's just see what happened. So I do stand those zombies up. That one does go in there. Mummy in there. So I'm doing all these moves without rolling any dice. There's no risk involved. The white comes over here to come in there. And now I'll throw this block. Okay, so what that does do now is cancel out this assist. So if I wanted at some point to throw 1 dice here, this guy can't assist anymore. I probably have to throw it there, and because that Blitzroar's got dodge, that's 1 in 6 for a knockdown. Not quite as good odds as hitting this skeleton. So maybe could have thought about a turn ordering, although you're not going to start with a 1 dice block first. But those are the first dice I rolled, and it was a pretty safe thing. Either of those results would not have been a turnover because my ghouls got blocked. But I took the push back because I wanted this Blitzroar away so this ghoul could be an assist. And I could maybe have stood that ghoul up first, because if that was a turnover, which probably would have been double skulls, reroll, and then double skulls again, which is really slim odds, the ghoul would have still been prone. So maybe I could have stood that ghoul up first. Because the ghoul's not going anywhere, it's just going to stand up there. That's safe. So here comes the blitz. The main thing I wanted to do this turn, the blitz on that guy. Also managed to kill the thrower, which is a nice little bonus. And it also failed its regeneration, which is bad for the Khemri. That's their only thrower on the team, so they're now left with a bunch of agility 4+ players with no sure hands. And then final block over here. So this was a 2 dice block. I didn't have anything else to do because this was 1 dice, whichever way I went, and that's less risky than this one. This zombie was not going to do anything because that's 2 dice uphill on the Tomb Guardian, and I'm not going to dodge away. So that 1 in 9 block at the end there came up a skull and both down. Neither of them had block, so I took the both down, and that caused a turnover. I could have re-rolled it, but I've still got 6 more turns of this to go. I don't want to use a re-roll there when I'm not going to do anything else anyway. So did I achieve my goal for the turn? Well, not really, because I wanted to be holding the ball. That was the main thing I wanted to do. I've instead sort of got a lesser version of it, which is to have these three players all like marking the square where the ball is. And they're also between the ball and the bulk of the Khemri team, which is going to make it hard for my opponent to get the ball. So what I could have done instead, actually, if I just go back to the beginning of my turn. So what I could have done instead is to switch the white and the mummy over here over, using the white to go mark the ball. Although actually I couldn't have. I'd have to use the white to just put an assist in here because I can't get through into that square. So the white could have come here. I wouldn't be marking the ball, but I would have an assist on here. So I could have both whites in here for that assist. But then use the mummy to blitz the throw right instead. And that's not safe. Firstly, I wouldn't have that tackle zone on the ball before I throw any dice. But also the mummy doesn't have blocks, so it's going to be 1 in 9 for a turnover rather than 1 in 36 when the white does it. But it is 8 out of 9 to get at least a push on the throw roll, which is the minimum I want to be able to move it away from the ball. Mummy has 2 dice because of its high strength, so it doesn't need the assist of the ghoul. And this is the crucial bit. So that means the ghoul can stand up and then try and grab the ball afterwards, which is something that I didn't have that opportunity for when I needed it to assist because I needed it to stand up first. So the key thing really is basically it's a bigger risk to use the mummy for the blitz, but it's like bigger reward of possession of the ball. So it could have gone that way for me. And the key thing really is balancing that sort of risk and reward, balancing safe and important actions to work out the order that you need to do them in and which actions you're going to take. So I didn't get possession that turn. I took the safer option of the white blitz, which meant I couldn't really do that. I could have tried to pick it up with the blitz in white afterwards, but that's 1 in 3 for a turnover. And I hadn't finished the turn yet. And I didn't get possession of the ball. I sort of settled for making the opponent's turn harder instead. But I did actually go on to score quite quickly afterwards, I think within the next 2 turns. But the game didn't go so well for me in the second half. It actually ended 1-1. And I did some analysis sort of post-coaching of this game, of that second half, which I'll put, I think it goes top left when you put cards on, but that'll be up there if you want to go and have a look. Is the ball safe? So that is one of those key questions to ask yourself every turn, wherever the ball is, whether you're attacking or defending that drive. If you're defending and the ball isn't safe, your priority that turn has to be doing something to exploit that. So go try to pick the ball up if it's on the floor and in reach, or at least sort of surround it with tackle zones to make it hard for the opponent to do that. Or if the ball carrier is vulnerable, make your turn about getting the best blitz on that you can to give you the best chance of getting the ball on the floor. If you're on offense and the ball isn't safe at the start of your turn, your priority has to be making it safe. So don't give your opponent those opportunities that I just listed. If at all possible, this needs to happen without rolling any dice. So if the ball's loose and you can move someone to at least sort of put a tackle zone on the ball, do that before you roll any dice. If the ball carrier is within blitz range of an opponent, screen them or like retreat them out of reach before rolling any dice. If you can't do it without rolling dice, rolling these dice to make the ball safe should be the first dice that you roll. So here, this white has managed to break through and stand to mark this thrower. You can't get out of this without rolling some dice. So it's a 3+ to dodge away, and the thrower doesn't have the dodge skill. So this could burn a team reroll or become a turnover with a drop ball, or maybe both of those things. But one of those other questions we ask, where is the blitz? And the blitz is here. Like this blitzer is available to move, rolling no dice, and could just come and push the white away, freeing up the thrower to come over to a safe spot. Or maybe there's like a sequence of actions you need to take to get that priority action down. So the blitzer in this case, well, imagine this one's already acted or something, but the blitzer who needs to make this blitz is tied up by the skeleton. And instead of, it's a 3+ dodge to go there, which is a 1 in 3 failure, or this lineman just blocking this skeleton away with 1 assist. That's 2 dice. It's 1 in 9 to go wrong. So the lineman can just get a push here, get the skeleton out of the way, then the blitz is free to make that blitz. That's 2 rolls, and then you're making the ball safe. It's doing it as quick as you can. Now, if this situation was in turn 8 and you're looking to score, your priority is different. So your priority when you have to score is not just to keep the ball safe, it's to score a touchdown. So maybe your blitz is actually here instead, and then you have to take a bigger risk of dodging the thrower away and making the pass over to this catcher. You can then score a touchdown. And you needed to use your blitz there to free the catcher up, so you didn't take tackle zone penalties for the catch, and you also didn't have to take some difficult dodges to get the ball into the end zone. So all of those things, balancing risk and rewards, priorities for the drive and the turn, they all combine to sort of tell you what you need to do with your actions in each turn. That situation, though, with the white marking the thrower over there, that's something that it's a good idea to sort of prevent happening in the first place. When you have someone holding the ball, you need to protect them, keep the opponents unable to blitz the ball carrier. And the answer to that question about ball safety is often going to be, yeah, it is safe. And we protect the ball carrier and make the ball safe by screening and by caging. We'll start with caging because this gives us a good foundation to build from. We switched the roles around a bit here because undead are perhaps more likely to form cages than humans. It's not like humans can't or don't ever form cages, but it's just undead definitely do on probably most of their attacking drives. So you have a ghoul holding the ball, and actually I'm just going to take the ball away and I'm going to give the ghoul a blue dot, which is how we signify a ball carrier in this format. The ghoul's holding the ball, and the squares that we most need to protect for the ghoul. Imagine on these players here at the moment, they're just not helpful for the illustration. But the squares we need to protect are the diagonals. So these are the squares that humans can get into without throwing dodges. So they're the most dangerous squares for the ball carrier. I'm just going to put 4 players around the ghoul like this. And I'm going to highlight all their tackle zones. Humans just need to mark these 2 zombies to stop them assisting. And then blitz the ghoul from here with no dodges and on 1 dice. And that's a 1 in 3 chance of knocking over the ball carrier. The ghoul has dodge, but it doesn't have block. Get rid of these, and instead stand these teammates on the corners instead. You get what is the classic and basic tight cage. So the ghoul can't be blitzed here without rolling a high dodge. So a dodge into one of these squares is into 3 tackle zones, and that's a 6+ dodge for a human. Now this tight cage here, it doesn't take up that much space, and that can allow the opponent to sort of get quite close to the ball in your face and hold things up. And you could consider spreading out a bit instead. So having 2 spaces in between your sort of cage corners, having 2 spaces between your screening players, it still puts down tackle zones to make dodges more difficult. But it takes up and controls just a lot more space on the pitch. And this is going to depend a bit on your opponent though. So a dodge, say into this space here, it's only into 2 tackle zones, and that's a 4+ for an edge 2+ player like an elf. So it's not necessarily going to be all that safe or completely. Tighter cages sort of tend to be better protection against higher agility. We can pack more tackle zones together. But also, you don't always need to cage at all, and you probably wouldn't do it this deep in your own half. Sort of caging deep and early is going to pull a lot of your players back, and it surrenders loads of space on the pitch for the defence to pressure you higher up, and it will slow down or even stop your attack in its tracks. So instead of caging this far back, we can move these players forward a bit and put up a screen instead. And you can kind of see. So they're keeping the opponents at bay a bit more, and they're still protecting the ball carrier. You can protect the ball carrier at a distance, you don't have to be right next to them to do it. This uses some of the same principles, but it expands out the screening players to just keep opponents at bay where they are. And as the ball advances, you just consider blocking the path of opposing players with bodies or with tackle zones while you move the ball up the pitch and eventually score. It's maybe a bit obvious, but there's not really a shortcut to improving at this game. You just play more until you learn and improve. But learn from games that you lose, because you will lose quite a few as you're learning how the game works. And you're going to learn more from games that you lose against stronger opponents than you'll learn from games you win against weaker opponents. So if you're playing a video game version of Blood Bowl where the AI is notoriously poor, you're not going to learn as much from playing against a computer as you would from straying into an online league and playing against other people. Playing the AI can be quite a fun way to sort of grind out some team development, and also quite a good way while you're learning how the game works to make sure you've got that. And playing the AI is something I still do a bit. I find it quite fun sometimes to just sort of develop a team in a quite free way. Once you've got the hang of how to play the game, it's not going to pose you much of a challenge, and you're not going to get any better. When you do play others, like, examine what goes wrong. So if you're playing Blood Bowl 2 or Blood Bowl 3, if you're watching at some point in the future where it's been released and is working properly, you can watch game replays. So go back over them with a critical eye of your performance, look at key turns in the game and work out what you could have done better. When the opponent gets a breakthrough, how could you have stopped it earlier? Game replays aren't something you get on tabletop, of course, but if you're in a sort of friendly club environment, playing someone more experienced, ask them what they think at the end of the game. What did you need to do differently? How can you improve your decision making? Like, that's obviously going to be a bit easier if you know your opponent quite well already. But the Blood Bowl community is generally quite a friendly and accepting place, certainly by gaming standards anyway. And if I'm playing someone new to the game, I'm always more than happy to offer that help after a game, often during the game even as well, like particularly in helping to sort of recognise what priorities should be turn by turn. I've also offered quite a bit of unsolicited advice to players in the Dented Shield League that I play in when I do some game recaps, and that actually makes up the bulk of the content on this channel. But that was a league that started with 6 of the 8 players being new to the game, and I wanted to help them learn how to play. And I did it in that way because it's what I do as my own matches, and I found it helpful to examine real game situations like that. So Blood Bowl is very much a dice game where you can feel like you're making all the right calls, but then a single dice roll takes all of that away from you. It's really fickle, nothing is guaranteed, and the game punishes failure really hard. It's really easy though to assume you're doing everything right and just blame the dice and then declare that the game is stupid, and that happens quite a lot. Sometimes you'll run into a sort of 1 in 36 failure that just completely changes the game through no fault of your own, and that's just how it goes sometimes. But something you should do when you look back on games is to consider the probability of your actions more than the actual outcome of them. So if you're looking back at a game and a key dice failure comes up, look at all the options you had. If there was nothing better and less risky, basically you've kind of made the right call and you're pretty much playing the game right. But if you start to notice patterns in your play where you're regularly leaning on 1 in 3 failures, 1 in 6 failures, even like 1 in 9, if you're consistently making those actions, one of them is going to go wrong and mess things up. That's not the fault of the dice, that's you needing to find better plays with better odds, so look out for them. Like, if the problem is that you've got no players left, so you've only got desperate actions, you kind of need to address that part. So go back a few turns, look at protecting your players better and not giving up so many blocks. There's always something pretty much that you can do or could have done to make things better. And if you're consistently coming into a turn with a situation where you look at the board and you recognise, oh, well, I need a whole bunch of 3+ rolls to come off or I'm totally screwed, it's basically already gone wrong by that point. So a couple of tools to share with helping to work out probabilities. First one is a video by Mike Davis, who has a really good playlist about how to play the game and improve at it. Not in quite as much detail as this one's gone into, but it is good stuff. This particular video that's linked below uses some of his maths expertise. I believe he's actually a maths teacher, or was at one point, if not currently. But anyway, he's good with numbers and has a really good explanation of 1d6 and 2d6 probabilities, which applies equally to block dice. Give that a watch, because like watching that just once a couple of years ago helped me to finally get a good grip of dice probabilities after a long time of having only a quite vague understanding. Second one is an online tool called Samba Action Calculator. Now this is a browser-based tool where you can calculate specific percentage chances for absolutely any action or series of actions in the game. That's linked below too, and it's a fantastic resource. At the time of making this, it's not entirely up to date for the new edition, so it still calls rushes, go for it. It doesn't have the brawler skill accounted for, or changes to the pro skill, or the newer rules for passing interference, but it's still fantastic, and you can pretty much work around most of those things. If you're on a Discord server that has extra arms bot attached to it, so anyone in the Dented Shield League has access to this on our server, you can use some shorthand commands to get Samba to calculate probabilities for you quite quickly without having to use the tick boxes that were on the site. Either way though, Samba's a fantastic tool that many Blood Bowl players are very grateful for. So playing the game more is the best way to improve, and I've shared, I think, basically all I can in this part in terms of advice. But there are still plenty of other guides out there that will almost certainly cover things that I've missed or have a different or better take on things. But one way I've learned and improved a lot over the past couple of years even is to watch good coaches play the game, particularly if they're quite talkative when they play or are happy to answer questions, because they're going to talk you through their decisions. Now, I stream on Twitch a bit, but not very often and not to a particularly high standard. But there are loads of other and better coaches that do. So I've mentioned Andy Davo a couple of times, and that's where I've learned the most over the past couple of years or so. And watching live and interacting is quite a nice way to be able to sort of pick the brains of someone who's good at this game. There are others too. So Rick Reckless is the biggest current Blood Bowl 2 streamer in terms of following and hours of content. I think he's just ahead of Andy Davo in that particular count. But he runs a great stream. And you also have coaches that are particularly good with certain teams as well. So if you're into Skaven, check out someone called Crystal Hunter, who does phenomenal things with Skaven, pulls off like incredible plays. Misspelled Tree is a fantastic Wood Elf coach. Purple Chest, who is actually live at the moment as I came into here. He's a notoriously good and efficient dwarf coach, and there are plenty of others too. If you've got an hour or two to spare at some point, browse over to Twitch, come into the Blood Bowl 2 category. That's the one that's most used at the moment, and just see who's on. So it is mainly Blood Bowl 2 at the time of making this, which is now an old rule set. There are a lot of people playing online games of Fumble 2. I know Purple Chest is one of the ones who does that. And that uses the current rules, although it's visually a bit more difficult to watch and follow. It's sort of a bit 80s Nintendo for me. But that whole like online streaming community, a lot of them could be found on YouTube as well if you don't like the live thing. But it's a great source of coaches who know what they're doing, and you can watch them and learn from what they do. And it's a good and ready substitute for playing someone at a club, seeing that they're great at the game and then asking them for advice. But that's about all from this series. It's been a bit of a roller coaster of a run. If you've watched right the way through, you may well have gone from knowing little to nothing about Blood Bowl to now being in a position where you understand how the game works and are equipped to play and to start improving. I certainly hope that's the case. That was the aim right from the start. I hope you've enjoyed it though, and maybe found something in it useful or at least interesting. I've certainly had fun making it. So Blood Bowl, it's my favourite game. Maybe it will be yours too. Thanks for watching.